Arcs are a segment of a circle and can be created in much the same way. Arcs do need more information than a circle because you need to define where the beginning and ending points are, in addition to the center location and the radius. Let's jump into SOLIDWORKS and create some arcs. The arc command is directly below the circle command. And if I click on the arrow next to the arc icon, I get 3 options here. I've got the center point arc, the tangent arc, and the 3 points. So let's just go through those in order. So center point arc is very similar to a center point circle. I'm just going to click on the center point to start off, define the radius of that circle or the defining circle. And then wherever I started my click at is where I'm going to start that arc at. And notice I can drag this around to define that shape. So as I move around that circle or move on the other direction, I get that shape, and it has a couple helper lines that will pop up and snap to the horizontal, for instance, or something else like that, depending on how we want to define it. So I'm just gonna go ahead and click here. The problem with an arc is it's just floating out in space, right? So I can grab these endpoints, I can drag it around a little bit. So I don't really have a good way to define everything about this arc. So if I put a dimension on here, I know the radius of it. Okay, that's fine. So I can type in maybe 75, for instance. Great. But still, the endpoints are just floating around. We know it's tied to the center point, which is great. Those are the 2 pieces of information that we define a circle with. Now we need to go and tie these ends in. So my favorite way to do this would be to use some center lines. So I'm going to go from the origin out to one of those arcs, double click and start one more. Now I've got kind of a definitive attachment to the center point. And now I can put some dimensioning in here. So I'll dimension from line to line, and I can define how many degrees I want that arc to go through. For instance, I'm going to type in 130. And there it is. But notice they're still undefined, or I can still spin this thing around. So I could say something like this line I want to be horizontal. So I'm using those relationships again to define it. Now look at everything here. It's a fully defined sketch. Everything's got a number or a dimension or an angle. So if we want to change any one of these things, we can obviously just type in a new number. It's going to change, but it's fully defined at this point. Okay, let's delete that and jump onto our next arc. This is the tangent arc. Now tangent arc has a special condition that needs to start from a straight line. It needs to be tangent to something. So before I actually can get into this command, I'm going to hit escape, get out of that. I'm going to go create a line. So I can either use a regular line or a center line. So I'm going to use the center line here, start from the origin, drag it out. And once I have a line defined, now I can use that tangent arc to start from that. And now it's tangent to that line segment. So I can drag it out, move it around any way I want, get to the point I like. Notice it's giving me some helper lines as far as the angle and the radius. Drop that on there. And notice I stay in that command depending on where I go. And I can continue with that tangent arc from another arc. So if I click on the endpoint here, I can still be tangent to that first arc and continue on. But the thing about tangent arcs is that we always need to start from some other type of item to be tangent to. I can define this a little better by giving it a dimension as far as a radius. I'm typing 100 inches here. And now we need some more information. We need how about a dimension here. I'll type in 140. Now we have a fully defined arc besides that endpoint, right? So we don't know how far this is going up here. So we need to define that. And I'm going to use that same method I used before, just using the center line, snapping it to that endpoint. Now I have the ability to kind of drag that around. Now I can define this multiple different ways. I can add a relationship or horizontal, or I can give it an angle if I wanted to. So say like 20 degrees from the horizontal, and then I'll define that arc for us. That's a tangent arc. Okay, let's delete that. The last arc here is the 3-point arc. Quite simple. We're going to pick on the center point again, and my second place is going to be what I want to snap to. So I'm going to snap up here. And notice it's just giving me a length at this point in time. And then my third click is defining how much that's going to arc out. And now I'm getting some more helper lines as far as the angle that I'm at and the radius that I'm at as far as that shape. So that third placement is going to drop it here. Now I can define this a lot of different ways. I can move the arc itself or the endpoint, or either one of the endpoints or the center point. So I got a lot of control with this one, but it's also a lot of degrees of freedom that I need to tie down and to make this a fully defined sketch. So to get that point, I need to get the center line. There's a lot of different ways to do this. I'm going to do one of the ways. I'm going to click on the origin. I'm going to snap to the endpoint here. Then I'm going to throw a dimension on there. So I'm going to type in, say, 380, which is going to define the length of it at least. Now I still have the option to move this arc around. So I need to add a radius. So I'm going to say 280 on that one. Now it's got its width across and its radius defined, but we need to still define as far as maybe an angle. So to do that, we can just grab another center line and just use this as a line. It's a horizontal line here to place a dimension between the two. Let's give it 25 degrees, for instance. And now that defines the angle that it's at, the radius, and the width between the 2 points. Now, if I didn't want that one here, I could have defined this as from this point to this point in a vertical relationship as well. Say like 340, and that would work as well. So a lot of different ways to define these shapes. We just need to make sure we're tying those two edges together. I'm going to do one more last thing here as far as a way to lay things out. So I can actually use circles. I'm going to start with a circle here. I'm going to start with a circle here. I'm going to make these circles touch. All right, so I'm going to say this circle and that circle, and I'm going to add a tangent relationship. They're going to touch. So I can actually use these as helpers, though. If I select both of those, I'm going to turn these into for construction geometry. And then I can actually place some arcs on those. I can say from this part of that circle here to this part of that circle here. I'm using those construction circles as kind of my guides for creating my arcs. And this construction circles will not be used. I'm only going to be using that arc right there. I'll do a couple more just to illustrate it. So I'll click on this point here. I'll click on that point there. And I'll snap to that circle diameter so that I can use these as a placement or a starting point for the other creation of geometry. I'll start with like a tangent arc here, and then I can snap to this point here and possibly make this arc here, hold on control to that arc there, and make that a tangent arc as well. So now that's going to flow into here, and then I'll just add one more 3-point arc to go and connect these two together and then snap to that. So now I have a nice guide curve that's dependent upon these two circles. If I go ahead and I define some sizes here of like 240 for this one, 200 for that one, and we need one more thing that's going to tie these together as far as where the location is. So I'm going to use my friendly construction geometry and two more dimensions here. So on this line here, 200, and this line here. So this is what we don't want to have, right? So if we said we have a dimension, we're saying we're having conflicting sizes. That's actually already been defined because we gave it a horizontal. And so therefore, we're fully defined. We use these two construction circles to actually lay out a series of arcs. We used 3-point arcs and one tangent arc to lay that out. Arcs are helpful for creating smooth flowing shapes and appealing aesthetics. They are just segments of a circle, and sometimes starting with a circle is a good way to define location for completing arcs.